Hey, Blender Bob here. You probably saw the ads and you're thinking, why Blender Bob? Why did you turn on the ads? It was so nice. Well, here's the thing. I've been doing this for almost a year now. I got 39 clips. The average viewing is barely over 2,000. And I just made 3,000 subscribers and I'm thinking, gee, does it really worth it? Because these clips takes a long time to do. I mean, an entire weekend and sometimes 2 weekends, that's all I do. I work all week and then on the weekend I do my Blender Bob. I get tired and I look at this like, gee, 2,000 views. Whew. So I thought maybe if I monetize my channel, I will get more views because YouTube will go like, oh, now you want to play the ad game. Okay, so now we will support you and we'll put you on top of the search results. I don't know. I mean, I did some research on YouTube. Some people say it makes a big difference. Other people say, no, it won't change anything. Well, we'll see. Now, why doing a tutorial on a Borg Donut? Well, that's because 2 weeks ago, somebody wrote in the comment, hey, you should make a tutorial about, a donut tutorial like Blender Guru. And I thought, well, he already did it. And I don't want to show the same thing that somebody else did. Or if I do, I want to do it my own way, something different. My little Blender Bob touch. So, yeah. You know what? I'm going to make a donut tutorial, but it's going to be a Borg donut. And in the title, I'm going to put so many keywords that if I don't attract people with this, nothing will. So we're going to have beginner, tutorial, geometry node, donut, Borg cube, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so for the kit bashing stuff, you go on Gumroad or Blender Market, you search for kit bash and you're going to find a lot of them. So that's where I find my stuff. Some links in the description. For our Borg Donut, what I did is I used these panels here that I found on Gumroad. I just assigned some very basic shaders on them. There's nothing special, just some specular and that's it. Nothing complicated there. You just want to make sure that the pivot is in the center and on top of the surface because once you're going to instance it, you want it to be flush on the surface. For the kit bashing part, I just assigned a very basic shader and a texture on it. It's sci-fi texture I found somewhere on the net. This is not about shading, it's about geometry nodes, so I didn't go too crazy about the details here. It just looks good when it's so small anyway, So you can play with it, do whatever you want, but this is what I did and, well, it works. That's the texture. Just search for sci-fi textures on Google. You're going to find a lot of them. For the kit bashing parts, you want to make sure that the origins are all centered. So if I put everything here back to 0, you will see that they will all go on top of each other. All right. The first thing we want to do is to add a geometry node modifier on it. 2 ways to do it. You can do it this way, or you just click on new and it's going to create a new one here. Now what we want to do is to distribute some points on this donut. So we're going to create a node that's a point distribute. You can move it around and it's going to connect automatically to the network, just like if it was a shader. So you see we have a lot of points here, a lot. So usually what I do when I create something is I put the density at 0 before I connect it. Because sometimes your geometry is so heavy that you'll get so many points it's going to be hard to deal with. So I create a point distribute. Look, I put the density at 0 and then I connect it. So this way you don't get a horrible surprise if you have a huge ground. Let's say you're making a forest and it's gigantic. It's going to create so many points. It's going to be hard to manage. So always put the density at 0 first and then connect it. There are 2 ways you can distribute your points. You can have random and you have another one called Poisson Disque. Now what this one does is to make sure that it will not overlap on top of each other. So you can see a distance. So I want like a distance of, let's say 2.6 meters. And then it doesn't matter how much density I add, the points will never overlap on top of each other. They will always stay at a distance of at least 2.6 meters. Okay, so for now what we want to do is to instance geometry on these points and we're going to create a point instance node. So point instance, there you go. Now there are 2 ways you can do it. You can instance an object or a collection. Let's try with an object. So I'm going to create a, let's say a cone, add mesh cone, here you go. And I will use it in my network. Here I'm going to say I want to do the cone. And now I get a spiky donut. If you use a collection, you don't want to click whole collection because every object will be copied on top of each other for every point. You don't want that, okay? So now you choose a collection. Make sure you reduce the density just in case you get way too many because it may become very heavy, especially with the kit bash stuff. So panels, let's give it a shot. And yeah, we get a lot of them and they are way too big. Now we need to scale them. So we're going to create a point scale node. And from there you can adjust the size the way you want it. So let's put it at 0.1 for example. Okay, that's much better. If we take a closer look, we can see that all the panels are vertical. Maybe it would be better if they were horizontal, so we're going to create a point rotate. And we're just going to change the rotation 90 degrees in Z. We want to change the point here 90 degrees, and here we go now. Yeah, that's much better. But maybe we have too many panels, so we can play with the density here and the distance. Of course, since it's a demo, I already know the numbers I want, so 4.6 and 0.7. That looks pretty good. If this becomes too heavy for you to handle, you can go back to the original collection, select all the objects, and you go here in Viewport Display and you change it to Bounds. And you can go Apply to All, just where is it, copy to selected, and now everything is displayed as a bounding box, so it's much faster. Alright, on top of this we're going to add the kit bashing. So we're going to create another network very similar to the other one. We could copy the nodes that we already have or just create new ones, doesn't matter, same thing. Don't forget to put the density at 0, it's especially important for this because it's going to be very heavy geometry, so you don't want it to be flooded with super heavy stuff on it. Okay, what else we need? We need a join geometry. This will allow us to join the geometry from the panels to the kit bashing, so now they're going to be together on top of each other. Very simple, connect them like this, here you go. If you only want to see the kit bashing stuff, just unconnect the first one. Just like that, and you're going to see only this. Now we don't have anything here, so just add the density a little bit higher. Now we get a lot of points. Okay, now point instance like we did before. Point instance, click. And what we want to instance here is a collection, so we remove this and we want to do our kit bash. Now we're going to get a lot of stuff. Takes a while because it's heavy. We don't see them because they are itsy bitsy tiny. So let's create a node. Instead of a scale, we're going to do something different because we want a random scale. We don't want them all at the same scale like we did for the panels. So we're going to create an attribute random. I'm tired. Attribute randomize. Now what is that? What are we going to do with this? Well, we're going to connect it and we're going to change the attribute. It's going to be scale. We don't see it there in the list, so we can just type it scale. Now it's between 0 and 1. 0 is nothing, so we'll make it a little bit bigger. Between 1 and 5, now we're starting to see some stuff. So let's play with it a little bit, see what difference it makes. You see, oh, now that's getting interesting. Now the problem is that if we make them too small, they are inside the panels, so we don't really see a lot of them. So we need to offset them to push them a little bit, and we're going to push them along the normals. How are we going to do this? With more nodes. This time we're going to use an attribute vector node. The operation we want to do here is a multiply. First attribute here in A is going to be the normals. So we can pop it up and it's going to be here normals. Normals, here we go. And attribute B here is going to be a vector. And the result of this is going to be what we want it to be. We're going to create one. We're going to create our own attribute. We're going to call it normal Bob. After this, we're going to add a point translate. And it's going to be an attribute, and the target will be our normal Bob. Now, how does it work? This means that we're going to take the normal, we're going to multiply it by this number, and it's going to create a new result. And this is the new result that is used for the translation. So all we need to do at this point is to change the values here. If I put 2, that means I take the length of the normal and I multiply it by 2, so they are 2 times bigger. Now you need to change all 3 of them, right? But you don't want to do this because it's too much trouble. You know, you can select all of them, but nah, whatever. Let's just create a value and we're gonna, whoops, where is it? It's right here. Let's create a value and we're gonna plug it right here. And this way we can just change the value in one place and it's gonna change them all. All right. So at this point you just play with the density a little bit more here until you get something that looks really nasty. We need lights, and for lights I just created this little sphere here and I put a shader that's just an emission shader, very simple. I can put it invisible, I don't need to see it. And we're going to create another network that we're going to connect to the rest of it. It's pretty much the same thing as we did before. We're going to need a point distribute, we're going to need a point scale, and we're going to need a point instance. And we connect all of them together. If you want to support me in my Patreon, thank you very much, it's really appreciated, but I don't have one. Sorry, I just felt like I needed a joke here. And I chose Tiny Light, which is how I called my little sphere. We don't see any of them because it's just too crowded in there. So let's unconnect a few of them. Let's unconnect the panels and unconnect the kit bashing and change the density. That's another reason why we didn't see anything. Okay, it's too big, so let's try at 0.1. We want tiny lights. Okay, that's good. Now let's reconnect the rest to see if we're going to get a better result, if we're going to see something. So connect and connect. Yeah, I don't see anything, so maybe the best way to see them would be to render them. So I'm just going to crop a region because it's probably going to take a while to render. I'm not at the office with my crazy machine, I'm at home. So let's see. Yeah, we don't see a lot of lights. It's not because the density is not high enough, it's because they are too buried under all that crap. So what we're going to do is offset them on the normals, just like we did previously with all these nodes here. Okay, we'll skip the construction part. This is what it looks like. You can see I changed the result for light position instead of normal bulb because we don't want to use the same variable as we had before. So this is a new one. Okay, let's reconnect everything together. So this one here and this one here on top. And we can adjust the light distance because now they're too far away. Okay, change the value a little bit more. Okay, that looks okay. Let's try render. Let's see what it looks like. All right, it's working, but the lights are a little bit too big, so we're going to scale them down by half. And that's much better. So at this point, it's just for you to just tweak the settings to get more lights, less light, more crap, more whatever. Play with it, play with the shaders, have fun. What else can we do? How can we push it a little bit more? Well, maybe there's too much stuff in there. Maybe we want to decide where we want the geometry or where we don't want it. So what I'm going to do here is to select all the vertices from the donut and I'm going to create a vertex group. Actually, I'm going to create two. The first one, I'm going to call it, let's say, kit bash. And the other one, make sure you assign everything in there. And I'm going to create another one that I'm going to call lights. So lights, assign. Okay. Now, if we take a look at our graph, we can input this, the kit bash and the light, in the density here. So this one is this the right one? This is the kit bash, yeah. Okay, so here we're going to add kit bash. This is our vertex group we just created. Now I'm going to go into the weight painting mode here. So you go object and go in weight paint. Make sure that you had kit bash selected in the vertex group. I'm going to change my brush settings. If you don't see them, just go in header and show tooltips. I don't know why it's not on by default. So 1 means 100% of the geometry of the density. So I'm going to make it to 0. I changed the stroke, the fall off to 0 also. And now if I paint, you can see that I'm removing the kit bashing stuff. Now it's not obvious what I'm doing here. You just see geometry disappear and reappear. So let me give you a better example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the viewing of the geometry node and now you can see what I'm painting. Everything in blue means nothing at all and everything in red means 100% of the geometry. But you can paint, like at 50%. So if you just want a little bit more of the kit bashing, then you can do it this way. If I turn it back on, you can see I have a little bit there. And since we created another one for the lights, we could have done it for the panels too if we want to, but it doesn't make much sense in this case. So here in the density, I'm just going to select my lights. I will change the weight to 0 because I want to get rid of all the lights. Whoopsie, I'm still painting the kit bashing, so let's go back here and change for lights. And now I'm painting the lights and I can turn them off. Well, it's not like I'm turning them off, it's more like removing them. And now we got a donut with missing parts and the lights are not everywhere. Here's a cool little trick if you have a lot of attributes that you want to change and you don't want to go through your entire network and try to figure out where your stuff is. We're going to select the group input and go in the group. And then we're going to add something here. Press on the little plus here, plus. This will allow you to connect any value in it. So for example, I'll take this value here and I can connect it into the input. I disconnect this one, connect into the input. And that was the offset for the kit bash. So now this value appears in the modifier and I can change it straight from there. Of course, I can change the name because now it's called input. So I can double click on it and call it offset kit bash. And you can repeat the operation as many times as you want to get all the attributes that are needed to tweak your stuff without having to go through the entire network. Blender Borg here reminding all the other software package users that resistance is futile and you will be assimilated. This is how you do the donut in Maya. You import an image plane in the background and you just point at your screen and you tell people, look, I did this in Maya.